Imagine living next door to an old widow for years, seeing her drive the same aging car, watching her live alone in a modest little house, believing she was just another retired woman trying to enjoy her final years. Then one day, you discover she's secretly worth more than $20 million. But that's not the most dangerous part. The dangerous part is that the first person to learn her secret is a lawyer drowning in debt, disappointment, and regret. And once he learns the truth, he can never look at her the same way again. The story begins in the small town of Braxton, Virginia. Simon Latch sat behind his desk, staring at another stack of client files. For 18 years, he had practiced law in the same small office at the corner of Main and Maple Street. When he graduated from law school, he imagined a completely different future. He dreamed of success. He dreamed of wealth. He dreamed of becoming one of those powerful attorneys whose names appeared on skyscrapers. Instead, he spent his days helping people file for bankruptcy, fighting over unpaid child support, handling minor car accidents, and cleaning up other people's financial disasters. The excitement was gone. The ambition was fading. And every year felt exactly like the one before it. One of the few easy parts of his job involved preparing wills for elderly clients. Most of the time, the process was simple. Someone would walk into his office, explain who should inherit their house and savings, sign a few papers, pay a fee, and leave. Simon charged $250 for these services. In reality, his secretary Matilda handled most of the work, but clients liked believing they were receiving professional legal guidance, and Simon was happy to let him believe it. That afternoon, Matilda informed him that a new client had arrived. Her name was Eleanor Barnett. Eleanor was 85 years old. She was a widow. She lived alone. She had no children. And according to the information Matilda collected during their phone conversations, she owned a modest house and an old Lincoln sedan. Nothing unusual, nothing exciting. Just another routine appointment. Or so Simon thought. A few minutes later, Eleanor entered the office, carrying herself with surprising confidence. She was neatly dressed, polite, well-spoken. And despite her age, she seemed mentally sharp. Matilda offered her coffee before leading her into the conference room. Simon greeted her warmly. Like many lawyers, he had mastered the art of making clients feel comfortable. He complimented her necklace. She smiled. The conversation began. At first, everything seemed perfectly ordinary. Eleanor explained that she wanted to update her will. Her previous husband, Harry Corsack, had passed away several years earlier. Now, she wanted to make sure her affairs were properly organized.
Simon began asking routine questions. Did she have any debts? No. A mortgage? No. Car payments? No. Everything was paid off. Her late husband had hated debt and spent his life avoiding it. Simon nodded while making notes. So far, there was nothing unusual about the case. Then he asked about her assets, and suddenly, Eleanor became nervous. She looked around the room, lowered her voice, and asked a simple question. "Can I trust you, Simon?" Simon immediately sensed that something important was coming. He assured her that everything discussed between lawyer and client was strictly confidential. That answer seemed to relax her.
Eleanor began telling a story about her late husband. Harry had worked for Coca-Cola for nearly 40 years. Over time, he qualified for stock options and purchased as many shares as possible. He never sold them, not once. Years later, he became interested in Walmart, so he started buying Walmart stock too. Again, he never sold a share. Decade after decade, the investments quietly grew. Harry never bragged about them, never showed them off, and never told his sons. Most people believed the couple lived an ordinary middle-class life. That was exactly how Harry wanted it. Then, Eleanor finally revealed the numbers. About $10 million in Coca-Cola stock. About $6 million in Walmart stock. Simon's pen nearly stopped moving. For a moment, he wasn't sure he had heard correctly. $16 million, hidden inside a quiet little widow's investment portfolio.
Somehow, Simon managed to maintain his professional expression. Inside, however, his heart was racing. This was more money than any client had ever brought into his office. But Eleanor wasn't finished. There was still another secret. She also had nearly $4 million sitting in various bank accounts, checking accounts, savings accounts, certificates of deposit. The total fortune now exceeded $20 million, and nobody knew about it. Not her neighbors, not her friends, not even her husband's sons. As Eleanor continued speaking, Simon found it increasingly difficult to focus on her words. The number kept repeating inside his mind. 20 million. 20 million. 20 million. Then Eleanor revealed why she was truly there. A few weeks earlier, she had hired another lawyer named Walter Thackerman to prepare a will. At the time, she trusted him. Now she wasn't so sure. According to the will, after Eleanor died, Thackerman would gain significant control over her estate and oversee how the money was distributed. The arrangement no longer felt right to her, especially because she didn't even have any favorite charities to receive the money. The more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable she became. She feared she had made a terrible mistake. Simon listened carefully. He reassured her, told her the situation could be fixed, told her there were other options. And with every comforting word, Eleanor trusted him a little more. But while Eleanor saw a trustworthy lawyer, something else was happening inside Simon. For the first time in years, he saw an opportunity. Not a legal case, not a client, an opportunity. Before the meeting ended, Simon arranged another private consultation with Eleanor for the following afternoon. Away from the office, away from everyone else, just the two of them. After Eleanor left, Matilda asked how the meeting had gone. Simon hesitated for only a moment. Then he lied. He told her Eleanor might be confused, possibly forgetful, maybe even mentally unstable. Anything to keep Matilda from becoming interested. The secret was too valuable to share. That evening, as Simon stood by the office window watching Eleanor's old Lincoln disappear down the street, one thought dominated his mind. A few hours earlier, Eleanor Barnett had been just another client. Now, she was the most important person he had ever met. And neither of them realized that this meeting had just set something dangerous into motion. Most people believe greed begins with a crime. A theft. A lie. A betrayal. But they're wrong. Greed begins with a thought, a single thought that refuses to leave your mind. A thought that follows you home, keeps you awake at night, and slowly changes the way you see the world. Last night, Simon Latch learned about a widow worth $20 million. Tonight, he won't be able to think about anything else. After Eleanor left his office, Simon tried to return to work. He opened client files, answered emails, reviewed legal documents, but none of it mattered. Every page in front of him seemed worthless compared to the secret fortune he had just discovered. $20 million. The number kept repeating in his mind. Again, and again, and again. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't focus on anything else. Later that afternoon, a married couple arrived for a bankruptcy consultation. Normally, Simon would spend an hour listening to their financial problems. But today, he couldn't stomach the idea. Their debts felt insignificant. Their problems felt meaningless. Everything felt meaningless compared to $20 million. Simon called the couple and canceled the appointment. He blamed a sudden court emergency. It was a lie. He simply didn't care. As evening approached, Simon locked his office and drove to a quiet motel bar outside town. The place was popular among lawyers and judges who preferred drinking away from public view. Tonight, Simon wanted privacy. He wanted silence. Most importantly, he wanted time to think. Sitting alone in a dark corner, he ordered a beer and stared at the table. The image of Eleanor Barnett kept returning. Her smile, her trust, her vulnerability, and her fortune. Eventually, his thoughts turned toward Walter Thackerman, the lawyer across town, the man who currently controlled Eleanor's will, the man standing closest to $20 million.
Simon clenched his jaw. What kind of lawyer inserted himself into a wealthy widow's estate plan? What kind of lawyer positioned himself to control millions after a client's death? It felt unethical, manipulative, predatory. Then an uncomfortable thought entered his mind. If he were completely honest with himself, wasn't he beginning to think exactly the same way? Simon took a long drink from his beer. He didn't like the answer, but he couldn't ignore it. The fortune was changing him. Soon his lawyer instincts took over. He began calculating numbers. If Eleanor died tomorrow, how much would remain after taxes? How much would the government take? How much would eventually reach the beneficiaries? Simon couldn't remember the current estate tax laws, so he pulled out his phone and called an old friend from law school named Dirk. Unlike Simon, Dirk had become highly successful. He worked for a prestigious tax law firm in Washington.
Dirk, quick question, Simon said. What happens to a large estate these days? Dirk laughed. You haven't been paying attention, have you? Simon frowned. What do you mean? Dirk explained that Congress had recently failed to renew certain federal estate tax provisions. The result was extraordinary. For 1 year, there would effectively be no federal estate tax. Zero. Nothing. Simon sat frozen. He wasn't sure he had heard correctly. No estate tax at all? Not this year, Dirk replied. If someone rich dies now, their heirs hit the jackpot. Simon slowly lowered his phone. The information hit him like a freight train. $20 million. Not 12 million. Not 10 million. The entire fortune. After hanging up, Simon ordered another beer. Then another. His mind raced through endless possibilities. Darkness. Every ethical boundary that once seemed clear was becoming blurred. What had started as professional curiosity was evolving into something much darker, something far more dangerous. Obsession. The more Simon thought about Eleanor, the less he saw her as a client. Instead, he saw a lonely woman with no children, no close family, no trusted advisors. A woman sitting alone on one of the largest fortunes in Virginia. Suspense. And for the first time, Simon began wondering whether Walter Thackerman would be the only person trying to influence her future, or whether someone else might enter the game as well. Someone much closer, someone she trusted. Someone named Simon Latch.
Late that night, Simon finally left the bar, but the thoughts followed him home. And as he lay awake, staring into the darkness, he realized something terrifying. He was no longer thinking about how to help Eleanor Barnett. He was starting to think about how Eleanor Barnett could help him. And that thought would change everything.